Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog, and of John Martin, and of course, the captain, as always, of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted. How the heck are you?
Good Friday morning to you, John. And you look like you're dressed to go on a Bohemian cruise or something down in the Caribbean, and your hair is a little salty looking. A good salty color there, buddy.
Yeah, no fishing this weekend, actually.
Oh, my goodness. How are you going to survive?
Home. But this was a Father's Day shirt, so I am wearing it in honor of my family. They gave me this for Father's Day.
They got good taste. That's a good-looking shirt.
Yeah, there you go. I need all the help I can get. Well, before we get started, I want to say congratulations, I guess, because I don't totally understand how soccer basically works, but America lost yesterday in a tight match with Turkey, which I had not really actually heard of them, but they actually advanced in the loss because apparently they were going to advance no matter what happened, and the team they were playing was going to be out no matter what happened. So the next round is single elimination. If you lose, you're out. And I don't know if it's been determined who we play yet, but apparently because of that, one of the reasons why we lost is because, obviously the other team beat us, but they basically pulled all the starters from this game and played the whole bench because they wanted to give them some experience. And it was I watched some highlights of it. It went down to, I guess, in soccer sense, overtime, so to speak. But it's just been amazing to me, the reaction to the World Cup, both from America and especially, as we've talked about multiple times, Ted, the people of Europe that are coming over here and their reaction to it. It's just been amazing and wonderful.
It really is. And you talk about the game, I don't understand it really either, other than the one with the most points wins. And it reminds me of Ralph Hall, who was a longtime congressman from Texas, and he lost to Will Hurd. And he came into the Republican conference. He goes, well, I figured out why he beat me. And everybody goes, well, how'd he beat you? He goes, the son of a gun got more votes than I did.
I hear you.
It's pretty basic. It goes back to the basics there, John. No, it is. Soccer is a game that's growing in popularity. And I think football needs a rival. I think they really do, because they become where they think they can do anything they want and flout all this DEI and wokeism and the social changes. And we haven't seen that with soccer yet. So let's hope it gives them a good ride for their money and their advertisers, and another way to get to the American people.
Well, one of the things that really stands out to me about the World Cup, and like I said, about the reaction of fans coming here, but it's great to see that the people that are representing their team or cheering their team on are very proud to be cheering for their team, no matter what the country they're from is, even if they're from countries where, maybe they don't have it quite as good as us, or few that do, and or if any, but they're patriotic in their own way. And it reminds me of something that President Trump talked about when he first ran for president, and about America first. And when he was in his first term, talking about America first, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't put your country first. It just means we're going to put our country first, and where we can have mutual agreements and work together, we will. So I think that's wonderful myself.
I do too. I put my family first when I'm out there working. I'm going to do what's best for my family. It doesn't mean I'm going to spit or stomp or disrespect your family, but my responsibility is my family, and a leader is the same way. And now you remember when Obama, and this is where I talk about the Obamanization of America, the rapid decline, was when he says, we're no greater than any other country. Britain, they're great. And, remember when he said that, and it's like, you're the leader of our country and you're telling us You're not proud of this country. Of course, we all remember Michelle Obama saying, "This is the first time I've been proud of this country." And we'll get more into that. I'm going to turn it back to you because I can go off for the rest of the show on this.
Oh, I hear you, my friend. Well, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, I want to tell everybody, make that call. Call Freddie. You'll see the tagline come up there. There it is. Call Freddie. Become a part of our team. Like what we're doing. Share what we're doing far and wide, and become a sponsor of the show. And Ted, I do want to put out there a bit of thoughts and prayers to the people of Venezuela. We had major earthquakes all around the world, including even a little bit in the United States, but nothing compared to what they had in Venezuela. And of course, the president came out. Marco Rubio was actually in Bahrain when it happened, but he did a press conference, and we already literally have boots on the ground, not military per se. We might have to have military in there for transport, but we're trying to help them right now. And I loved what Donald Trump said. Our new great friends, the Venezuelan people, I think is basically what he said. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to them.
Well, you know what? You've got to rebuild those relationships, and it goes back to people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And, it is a terrible thing. And you know about the earthquake that was felt here in Willaca, right?
Is that the one from? Yeah. It. I guess the epicenter of it was down near Cuba. I knew I had a friend of mine in the hospital in St. Pete on the top floor, and that building was actually swaying while he was up.
So, I mean, the world, not just the geopolitics is changing, but the world is changing. Maybe it's a sign of we better tighten up and get back to some basics here. But we hope the people of Venezuela, the numbers I've heard are anywhere from 10,000 to over 100,000. And, I just can't imagine of a more terrible thing other than what the people of Israel went through with the Palestinians and what's going on in Ukraine and the Iranian people. The man-made conflicts, there should be no point for that or no reason for that. We've got enough to worry about with Mother Nature and those kind of conflicts.
Well, I think, something like this puts it in perspective, really, that we're only here for a flicker of time. I mean, individually, it's almost meaningless as far as
it really is
the length of time we have, and that we can squabble about the Straits of Hormuz and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about that a little bit again later in the show. But at the end of the day, we're all on this planet together, and we better find some way to live our best lives as a human species. And I'm not trying to lump us all into one massive country, but the reality is we're on the same spaceship called planet Earth. And there are many forces out there that we have no control over. And God help us, really, if we ever did.
You are. I mean, you're absolutely right. And I hope people understand. I think most people do. But, when we look at the world today, you can look at the world events going on, all the conflicts there. You can look at the changes we're going through here in America, and other countries have done this too. And then you look at election results, and the divide in this nation is at a point where, John, I don't want to make a prediction. I'm just going to make a statement. We're at a point now where civil war is right on the verge of erupting in this country. And I know you've got some videos coming up here and some clips and talking points about the elections in New York. That's just here in America, what's going on, the rapid change. And when you have rapid changes like that, people can adapt. And, I sent you that article about the Bolshevik revolutions, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this. So I'll turn it back to you for right now.
Yeah, well, before we get into that, because we're going to talk about a civil war that's happening after our break, probably about that is happening in the Democratic Party. Of course, we've been talking about the idea that it could happen across the nation as well. So we'll get into that shortly. But there were two major Supreme Court rulings, both
there sure was
with immigration, that President Trump won in this case. And let's talk about both of them. So let me read this and I'll turn it back to you. The U.S. Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling that allows the Trump administration to potentially revive a restrictive border policy they call metering, which basically means stay on your side of the border for asylum in a sense. It was actually started under Obama, expanded under Trump, and basically shelved by the Biden administration. But what are your thoughts initially on that? And then we'll get down into the details of it.
Yeah, well, when you said it started under Obama, he went into that DACA, delayed action against childhood arrivals. So these kids were coming in unescorted, not with their parents. If they came with somebody, and I had a bill that stopped that, and it got to the House floor and it passed in the House. And so Obama, they do a lot of talk like they didn't. We're tough on the border. They weren't. This is kind of like the Remain in Mexico policy. The caravans that were coming over, Trump negotiated well. We had National Guard on our border, along with other, I don't want to say National Guard. We had border security here. We offered to help in Mexico to process these people in Mexico and keep them there until their approval of coming into the United States. That got thrown out under the Biden-Harris border czar, Kamala Harris. And we had the influx of the border, and I know you've got a video on that. This is a good thing. The Supreme Court was right in doing this, and this really needs to happen around the world, or any country I say that wants to come in here. Get your permits to come into America legally, and if you become an assimilate and accept this country and the language and the flag, you'll be welcome in this country. But if you're part of that group that's wanting to destroy this country, you will not be welcomed.
Well, what's really fascinating to me about some of these arguments, and we're going to talk more about what's happening in the Democratic Party in just a little bit, but in general, it's amazing to me the things they worry about under certain circumstances. Like, they weren't worried about gas prices. We talked about that at all. Now that's all they talk about is gas prices. They weren't worried about, taxation. They weren't worried about taxes, but now they're basically talking about taxpayer money being spent on various things when they never cared about that before. They always talked about international law and how we need to follow international law. And that brings it back to this ruling right here, because what we've been doing with our asylum is not only a violation of U.S. law, but Ted, it's a violation of international law. Because in order to seek asylum, if I understand correctly, if you're going by international law, you have to seek it in the first country you cross into. So that means that the UN, if they're going to have a presence, should have had one along the Mexican border to the south of Mexico down there. And there's only two groups of people that should be able to seek asylum in the U.S., and that would be Mexicans and Canadians. That should be it, following international law, or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right on that. And to seek asylum, you've got to prove and show that your life is in danger with the threat of going back to your host country or your home country. And we don't follow that. So this is a time we really have to circle the wagons and get these laws right. And I'm proud of the Supreme Court for doing this. And of course, you've got your dissenters like Sonia Sotomayor, that sharp dissent against this ruling. And, it just shows that's where it becomes political ideology, and the Supreme Court has no room for that kind of stuff. It's the rule of law. And Trump, one of the most amazing thing he's done is put the Supreme Court justices that we have on there. Can you imagine? Another several more Ketanji Browns or Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court?
Yeah, it's pretty scary. But that's what's going to happen if the Democrats take over Congress. They're going to try to pack the courts and everything else. So we
get rid of the
that.
filibuster. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And we're at a point in time, John. You were bringing up the arguments that people were having, taxes and things like that. Nobody I see, very few in Congress, and I go up there, I just got back, very few are focusing on the existential threats of this country. And it's debt and it's China. Those are the two. And we should be focused on that. When I say China, when you look at what they control, the rare earth minerals, the pharmaceuticals, the seed stock for our crops, they control over 30%. And I can go on and on and on. And they're preparing for World control, and they're building up their military. And the arguments that they have in Congress, it's just crazy. I mean, they had somebody from the Epstein files, his secretary, that was booking stuff. And she goes, and so they're fighting over that kind of garbage. They need to wake up and start dealing with the major problems of this country. We're not going to have a country. And that's, I can't tell you how adamant and passionate I am about that. That is really what we should focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Democrats I mentioned earlier, it's interesting what they worry about. Now, all of a sudden, one of the criticisms of this ruling is they literally said that it would cause more people to potentially illegally cross the border. Like they gave two hoots about that. I mean, I can't believe they could literally look at you in the face or on camera and say they're now worried about people crossing illegally. Give me a break, man.
Yeah, that's a good time for Joe Biden's video, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to play that in just a moment. But you mentioned Justice Sotomayor. She delivered the dissent. Listen to this. She's saying that the ruling extinguishes the light of the torch of the Statue of Liberty. I actually think just the opposite. It actually preserves the country that they all want to come to, the one that actually has life, liberty, and the pursuit, not the guarantee of happiness. Because if we do what the Democrats were doing under Biden, if we return to that, we won't have a Statue of Liberty anymore.
No, by putting restrictions on there or conditions, you increase the value of coming to America. It's just not an open border where everybody takes it for granted. There is value to come here, and the Statue of Liberty is the hallmark of that. It is liberty and freedom, but there are stipulations like follow the rule. Be a responsible citizen. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you. It makes it more valuable, the Statue of Liberty.
Well, we're going to go over some of the arguments here that the left is making about this ruling. It said advocates and immigrant rights groups strongly criticized the ruling, warning, check this out, that it could endanger vulnerable migrants and lead to more deaths and humanitarian crises. So by keeping immigrants out or deporting them, we're going to endanger them more. But I want to play a video that's, check this out and tell me which is more in danger, the immigrants or Americans. Check this out.
Joining an urgent manhunt for this suspect, who police say carried out a deadly shooting spree across Kansas City highways, leaving one person dead and 4 others injured.
All companies use caution. One shooter from a black Honda Civic.
This happening Tuesday night amid the World Cup match between Argentina and Algeria just miles away. Now the FBI offering a $25,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of 22-year-old Oscar Sanchez Munoz. Police say after he shot into one of the cars, a driver died.
And there you have an illegal immigrant that is just randomly shooting people in Kansas City. You have all these illegal immigrant drivers that were given licenses in like California that have literally killed people in Florida and all over the country. I mean, I could just make a list of how illegal immigrants have killed people. Well, here's the thing about that, Ted, and I'll turn it to you. Crime happens. Crime happens. There's no doubt about it. But one crime you could absolutely prevent is any crime committed by an illegal immigrant, because they shouldn't be here to start with. So there you go.
No, I mean that, not only that, but all these liberal judges that are allowing people to get out of jail. And they're saying, oh, well, it wasn't his fault. He's here illegally, had a rough situation in his host country. And they're turning these people out. Then there's that other group of those liberal judges and prosecutors, the radical prosecutors, sponsored by the radical left progressive communists that want to destroy this country. And they're giving them a free pass, and it's making this country and our citizens, it puts them in harm's way. And it's the American people are at a breaking point. And that's why I say we're right at the verge of a civil war here. And I know we'll talk more about that as we get into the elections.
Well, you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, and I just made the point about that one of their criticisms of the left is it will encourage more illegal crossings if people cannot rely on legal ports of entry, like they cared about that. I want to play this video. This is Joe Biden in the debates leading up to him getting the Democratic nomination and ultimately becoming president. Check out what he said then.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
There you have it, what would become the president of the United States literally saying if he's elected, he wants you to surge the border. Last time I checked, surge was like an overwhelming force. Something surging is a bit overwhelming. So, Ted, give me a break. They're worried about illegal crossings when their candidate literally and became president encouraged people to do exactly what they did.
Yeah, well, surging, you and I being boat people, surge is when the wave breaks over your bow and sinks your boat, and they surged the border. So what can we say? Campaign promise fulfilled by Joe Biden. That ideology and those kind of people that were in that party that supported him, from the Obamas all the way through all the people that despise America, they're the ones responsible for what we are, the problems we have in this country as far as the illegal increased capacity and the crimes that are coming from that. 100% responsible. And you still have people in Congress, the Democrats, that want to fight against Trump, saying he's a racist. It's about rule of law, folks. Grow up. And if we don't get this under control and get it right, you won't have a country.
Well, this ruling essentially keeps what's already, the border's pretty much sealed now under Trump. So I don't think this particular ruling, although very important, really is going to have an immediate impact because we're already essentially doing that. Now, it could have an impact on a future presidency or something like that if they try to bring back the other. But the next ruling they had that's related to it could have major implications immediately.
Sure can.
The court ruled 6-3 that the Trump administration may end legal protections for migrants fleeing violence and natural disaster in Haiti and Syria. But it has a bigger impact because essentially it says that this kind of temporary status, protected status, can be lifted at essentially any time, just like it can be put on. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, it's a shame, but I think it's the right thing to do. Haiti is a failed country. It's been a failed country for over 40 years, pretty much like Iran. Actually, Haiti's been a failed country longer than that. And it's a violent situation. And I think it's going to be one of the flashpoints in the Western Hemisphere. Do you realize Haiti is the only country in the Western Hemisphere that we give humanitarian food assistance to in the Western Hemisphere? And, the challenge there, or not the challenge, the challenge is what the people have to go through for them. And I feel bad for them. But you're going to have a China or a Russia or a foreign Western or communist party come into Haiti if we don't get that right. And, this is going to be a flashpoint to where something will happen down there. And I can't share what I learned up there in D.C., but this is one of the things that they're looking at, what they can do to stop that flight. And in Syria, on the other note, Syria is something that there's countries that are investing in Syria. They've got a somewhat stable government. And so economic development is going into Syria, but not Haiti. And then across the island, you have the DR, the Dominican Republic, where they've got a pretty stable and growing economy. So it just shows you what rule of law, people following the law and having leaders that can lead. And they don't have that in Haiti. But this is a big ruling for the illegal immigrants coming out. It'll stop that, hopefully.
Yeah, I actually this past weekend talked to a friend of mine who is Haitian and has been in this country for quite a while. He's a legal immigrant, and he has an extended family for generations in Haiti, and they owned a lot of land and all that. But he told me flat out that they've already given up their land to other people they know that need it because they got to have some place to kind of hide, and that they are never, ever going back. And they're legal immigrants here. They're never going back.
You look where Haiti is on the world map. I'm looking at a map right now. It's a lot closer to Venezuela and South America, or Cuba. Where do they go? They want to come to the United States. They don't want to go to these other countries because of the way those countries are run. And I think this should be a wake-up call for the people in New York. Anyways, we wish them the best of luck, and I think this was the right ruling by the Supreme Court. It's time to have tough love on these rulings. And, it's not tough love to have tough love. It's tough love to follow the rule of law.
Well, this next stat, and then we'll probably go to break here in just a second, that why I say this ruling could have more immediate impact than the first one we talked about is it does mention Syrians and Haitians, but it also opens the door to protective status, temporary in general. There are Somalians and others. There's basically 1.3 million people in the United States now under that status from 17 different countries. That's the official government stats. It could obviously be more than that. But I want to say this, I'll turn it back to you, and then we'll go to break. People don't realize, they talk about, the immigrants coming here doing jobs, Americans want. We've heard all this stuff. But it has other impacts as well. It's not getting much coverage, but average rents now were escalating over the last 5 or 6 years everywhere in the country. They have gone dramatically down nationwide. And in certain places, they've gone down 20% or more. And it happens that those were a lot of sanctuary cities and illegal immigrants there that are no longer there. It turns out, Ted, imagine this, because we're going to talk about communism and socialism when we get back, that actually if you create a false demand, in this case, a bunch of illegal immigrants needing shelter, and the government's putting them in hotels and homes and everything else, it actually drives up the price for average Americans seeking a place to rent.
It's The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Supply and demand. I mean, this is something that's been around since the beginning of time. It's supply and demand, and you can try to regulate that, but good luck with that. You just wind up making a bad situation worse.
Well, we're getting ready to take a commercial break. As I said at the top of the show, make that call Freddie. We're going to hear a commercial and we're going to talk about some of our sponsors. I will turn it to you, Ted, to take us to break.
Now, I can't tell you how important it is to tune into us or other shows like ours that are educating on really what's going on, because it's a wake-up call for America. I have the privilege of being able to go up to D.C., and the stuff I hear, the average person, if they were to pay attention, they would vote differently than they are now, and they would be more engaged in the process. So to keep us on the air, we're fortunate to have Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair, where you can have a variety of automotive services from basic maintenance to advanced engine repair, computer diagnostics, and backed by ASE trained technicians. They work on diesels and gas. They're open from 5:30 or 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Don't show up at 5:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. And our good friends, Richard and Joe out there, we thank you. And we talked about the right to repair bill on Monday, and that is to allow automotive shops like Archer Automotive to stay in business and work on your car. If that bill does not get passed, you're going to lose independent repair shops. So call your representatives, Kat Kamek in this area, Randy Fine in the area I live in, and tell them you want them to support this bill. Absolutely. See you after break, John.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, Ted Yoho. We just heard from the old ball coach about Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, where I broadcast, and Ted joins me as well from there on Mondays usually. I did see a film on Facebook where there were a lot of people yesterday watching the soccer games from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. You couldn't pick a better place to go.
Watch it.
So check it out. Well, Ted, we've talked quite a bit over the last year and a half or so about a potential impending civil war in the United States. But there's, and that's still certainly a very real possibility, but there is an actual civil war happening in the United States right now. And it appears to be happening in none other than the Democratic Party that seem to always start the civil wars, if you think about it. But
yeah, really.
What are your thoughts on that? Because we saw, and we'll talk about it more specific in a minute, a watershed moment to a certain extent in New York City Tuesday. What are your thoughts about what's happening in the New York City primary and basically all over the country right now with the Democrats?
It really is. And I think this is a wake-up call again, not just for the Democratic Party, but this is what's going on in America. And it's smoldering right now. And it hasn't hit that momentum to where it's just going to happen. When you get a certain amount of inertia going in a certain way, you can't stop it. And this is where the Democrat Party is fighting against within themselves. And we had that in the Republican Party, but we were going away from being uber moderate and allowing this country to fall apart and not dealing with debt and things like that and open borders. So we fought against that. So now we've got those things better under control, the border, not the debt. The Democrat Party is tearing themselves up because you've got one that kind of wants to hang on to the liberal democratic ideals. Then you've got the other ones. You can't call them socialists. They're communists. I mean, you listen to what they're talking about. And one side will win, but I think overall they'll lose the Democrat vote and the Republicans will stay in majority is my guess.
Absolutely. I hope so anyway. But I want to play a clip from James Carville. I mean, he's not one of my favorite people, but I watched the whole clip of it, which is about an hour long. I tortured myself, so you don't have to. But I'm just going to play a short clip of it because I think he makes some interesting points about the current state of the Democratic Party and the direction they're heading and his beefs about it. Check this out.
And I actually do think it's time for Democrats to talk the S word, schism. I really do. Everybody's always said, no, we're coalition, we're big tent. And there's just some shit that I can't be in the same tent with. And we talk about what Madame was 3 for 3 last night in Manhattan. They call it the Commie Corridor. Fine. Jason Crow's service pack, vote bets, 10 for 11. You wouldn't know Jason Crow exists. Okay.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know Bill Sandberg exists. You wouldn't know. And I want to be very specific. I understand the free press for being here.
I mean, there you have James Carville, who was basically the orchestrator of Clinton's victory, both of them. And
That's
no
scary.
question, he's played a major role in American politics and the Democratic Party, especially, basically saying it's time potentially for the Democratic Party to split from these guys like Mandami and all. And he talks about a big tent. I love what he says about the big tent. He said, there are people I don't want in my tent. And so I got to give credit where credit's due. I think he's on to something there.
Well, he is. I mean, it's called survival. And it was funny because your non-cousin, Ken Martin, who is in charge of the Democrat National Committee, he wants the big tent. He wants to accept everybody. And this is what happens when you accept everybody, you get what's going on. And that, contrast that or compare that to the Biden administration, where they wanted everybody to search the border. Now they have the problem here. It's got to be dealt with. And so the Democrats invited all these people into their party. Congratulations, you got what you wanted.
Well, Mandami now appears, at least in certain aspects, to be the new kingmaker, because everybody he's endorsing, just like Donald Trump endorsing, everybody Mandami's endorsing seems to be winning. So, that's kind of interesting right there. But, I take these people at their word because, they if you listen to these three people, we're only going to play a couple of clips from people, but they basically are totally anti-American. They're totally anti-Israel, not beyond anti-Israel. They're flat out anti-Semitic, period. And they're for essentially taxation without any representation. And they adamantly, literally say that they're opposed to America, and in some cases want it not fundamentally changed, but obliterated. So I want to play this. This is a lady. I don't pretend to say her name correct. She's Darlaza Avila Chevier. She is a 7-year, check this out, grad student at Columbia. She's been there 7 years as a grad student, so she's never had a job. And when asked about illegal immigration, this is what she said, Ted.
Yep.
Check it out.
Deportation is wrong, though. That would seem to also include people who were convicted of breaking U.S. criminal law. Is the deportation of those people wrong?
Yes, and the reason I say that is because we have a criminal system. It is imperfect, but it exists. And it is one that if we accept as the process by which we want to engage with these issues, right, the issues of harm, issues of criminality, what have you, then we need to make sure that it is one that isn't also discriminatory on the basis of where people were born.
So let's unpack this. She basically says it's discriminatory.
She literally says that no one should be deported, including criminals that have committed heinous crimes like murder, rape, and everything. We're not talking about shoplifting here. She's talking about no matter what, there's no condition whatsoever that an illegal immigrant should be deported. I mean, wow.
You can't get much more radical than this lady. And if you look at where she came from, she's been at Columbia, as you pointed out, and her studies are all anti-American. They're all anti-Israel. She led the divest embargo movement and non-support for Israel. She led that at Columbia. She's written papers that her goal is to end Western civilization. And so, she's a person, she's a radical left. She's communist, her ideology. She is anti-American, anti-Jewish, and pro-Islamic fundamentalism. And that is from the river to the sea. And that's a national call for jihad. And it's not going to just be from the river to sea in that region of the Middle East. It's going to be all over America. I mean, it'll be all over the world. And we're already seeing it in different parts of the world. You and I have been on Chris Haven's show. And the
dispatch, yep.
Yeah, the information we get from that comes in, and it's not just periodically a skirmish. It's every day. Thousands of people are getting killed by these Islamists, and it's too bad because it really puts a bad name for the peaceful Muslims that can get along with people. But these other people are just radicals, and there's no room in our country for them. And that's why I say there's the impending civil war, and we're getting closer than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so people like her, and again, she's in New York. She wants to get rid of Western civilization. And you've heard me talk about that book of Chris Stewart's, The Miracle of Freedom, the 7 tipping points that saved the world. If you get rid of Western civilization, just look at the chaos around the world. And that's what this lady wants. She wants to destroy this nation. And that's why I sent you that thing on the Bolshevik Revolution. And I'm going to turn it back to you in a minute so I can pull that up.
Well, there were 3 candidates that won House seats, new people. One of them was an open seat that Jerry Nadler was in. So, that's one thing. But 2 incumbents important, if you want to call it that, from the Democratic Party perspective, and incumbents. One was a gentleman that led the impeachment of Donald Trump for the House. He was one of the top prosecutors, I think, from the House.
Dan
lead
Goldman,
the impeachment of Donald Trump. He got defeated. The other guy is the chair of the Hispanic caucus in there. He got defeated by two completely unknowns. Now, these are people, extreme power. And you know, Ted, that the biggest thing in the House, in Congress especially, but House and Senate really, is seniority. I don't totally agree with it all, but that is the way the system works. Seniority. So for the Democrats to lose two senior people that way is a major blow to the ruling bunch of the Democratic Party, is it not?
No, you're absolutely right. And this is really going to put pressure on Hakeem Jeffries, their minority leader who wants to be the Speaker of the House. I don't think these people are going to support him. And, if Graham Plattner gets into the Senate, Chucky Schumer, who really needs to go. I mean, the guy's a political hack. All that. So the whole face of the Democrat Party is changed. And James Carville, he's upset about it, as he should be. But yet he was part of the reason that it was changing, because people like him. They didn't stick to. They were so worried. They were much more concerned about power, staying in power, that they went more left to bring in more people into their big tent. Now they've got that tent, and in the meantime, look what's happened to America. And this is where I don't like political parties. You got to have them, because they don't focus on what's best for America. They focus on what's best for a party. And when you do that, you get that division in this country. And then within the division, they start dividing. And that's what's going on in the Democrat Party right now.
Well, Ted, I saw this coming, kind of like the guy over my shoulder here. We were both Democrats at one time. I actually left the Democratic Party before Mr. Trump did. So, because I saw this coming, and it was frustrating to me. I'm not saying Republicans have all the answers, but I'll tell you, people like you, when I got to know you, actually, and you never talked to me about this, but people like you convinced me to switch parties, because at least I'm not saying they have all the Republicans have all the answers, but at least there are people in the party like you that are asking the right questions. Whereas in the Democratic Party, they don't even want to ask questions, as far as what's best for America. I want to play another video here. This is Claire Valdez's acceptance speech from Tuesday night. She unseated one of those incumbents I was talking about. Pay attention, because Mandami introduces her, and I want you to hear what he's saying and then what she's saying. And check this out.
It was not the end of a political movement. It was the beginning.
And tonight, my friends, we have won. My name is Claire Valdez, and I am proud to say that I will be our next Congressman. Tonight, we haven't just won an election. We have declared that this movement is durable. That it is growing, and that it will not stop until working people are no longer asked to just build the table, no longer offered a seat at the table, but will run the table.
Ted, you heard Mandami literally say
a year ago
that when he got elected, they thought that it was the end of a movement. But now with this, it's actually the beginning of a movement. Sounds like a threat to me, to the Democratic Party and really the nation as a whole.
Well, they're telling you exactly what they're going to do, and they're doing it. And again, this is the warning. When Obama says we're going to fundamentally transform America, people said, yeah, right. But look how much transformation, John, we've had since his first administration when he came in. When was it? 2008, I think it was. And look how much transformation we've had. And I want to read this on the Bolshevik Revolution happened in November of 1917. Just real quickly, they were several reasons why the Bolsheviks appealed to many people within the Russian Empire. promised no more immediate radical change than rival socialists like so-and-so did, Mensheviks, promised immediate withdrawal from World War I. Let's get out of the different wars in Iran, and I agree with that. Immediate hold a general election for constituents, put more of their people in. That's what they would like, pack their people in there. Improve the economy and control inflation. Promise a fairer society for everybody. Control the powerful workers' unions, and they had significant support from the media and the armed forces. Does that sound familiar with anything? That's exactly what they've been promising. And did you see that vote in New York freezing the rents for up to 2 years?
Yes.
They froze the rents. And if you're a property owner, which we were, and we had rentals, when you do that, it takes the incentive away. So you pull out of those markets. I was talking to a friend of mine, a congressman from Utah and Idaho, and they said their states are growing so fast, and it's because people moving out of California because of these kind of policies. And the revolution has started, and people are moving, and they're voting with their feet in their pocketbooks.
Yeah, well, so the news is basically kind of saying, well, this is only isolated pockets and stuff like that.
Don't believe it. You can't believe it.
Don't believe it's happening everywhere. Because
that's why you got to watch our show.
Absolutely. We talked about Graham Plattner quite often. Well, a friend of mine was in Maine. He's got business up there. He was in Maine on election day. Of course, he's not supporting Plattner, believe me. But he has businesses in Bar Harbor, right?
Right.
So he took a picture of the vote tally that they just hang up on the bulletin board outside there. And do you realize that Plattner in Bar Harbor, and I'll pull it up another time, he got 97% of the vote in Bar Harbor, Maine. 97%, basically 100% of the vote. I mean, and this guy is just, off the chain. Look at what's happening in Georgia. Nobody's talking about Georgia. We got 2 Democrat senators in Georgia. Who would have thought that? Mm-hmm. Now we've got Ossoff, who is running for re-election. He's leading in the polls.
Yeah.
He raised $40 million already. On the day of the primary, the Republican primary, he didn't have a primary challenger. The very next day, he raised over $1 million instantly. So there's a lot of money and power going to these people. And if they can take over and hold on to Georgia, they can take over and hold on anywhere.
They can, and it's just a little at a time. And same thing in Texas. We'll see what happens with Tallarico out there. Those are wake-up calls for America. These things are fundamentally going to change America. You get more people like this, and we got to thank our friend Barack Obama. It is just crazy the radical change and the rapid change that we're going through in this country. And this next generation is the one that's really going to be influenced by this. And have to suffer the consequences of these elections. And that's why young people need to get out there, be bold enough to speak up against these things. These people are getting in power, and they're going to dictate to you where you're going to live, how much you're going to make, the kind of car you drive, if you have a car. And they'll put you in all these smart cities where you work and live in the same place. You don't travel. And they'll bring in the fatherland card like Hugo Chavez tried. But they have it in China and several other these despotic and dictatorial type of governments. And that's what they want to bring to you because they don't think people are smart enough to govern themselves. And I wonder that sometimes myself. The only way we're going to lose this country and the freedoms and liberties we have is if we stop paying attention and we don't get involved. And it's hard. It's easy not to get involved because the soccer game's on, football game's on, kids cheerleading practice or football practice. So we're busy. But at some point, we're going to have to pay a price. You're going to pay a price for liberty and freedom, or you're going to pay a price to try to get it back.
Well, Ted, we're celebrating America 250. And
that's why I got this shirt on.
Absolutely. Good job. The question really is, what about America 500? Are we going to actually survive another 250? Because the left not only doesn't believe we will. They don't want us to.
They don't
And
want
so
you to.
You wonder why this message is resonating. I want to play a video now. This is Mr. Bernard Sanders. And if you can take away the fact that it's him, I want you to hear what he is saying, because this message is resonating with young people who are highly energized right now,
Sure.
who are driving this democratic socialist. I think, Bernie, if you can take away the personality, he is saying a message that we need to hear, but the solution is not the socialist. But I think if you take away the personality and listen to what he's saying, you can see why it's resonating with some young people. Check this out.
Morning in America, tens of millions of people are waking up and they're saying, how am I going to put food on the table for my kid? How am I going to fill up the gas tank when gas is $4.50 a gallon? What happens if my car breaks down and I can't get to work? And if I can't get to work, I lose my job. If I lose my job, how's my family going to survive? What happens when my dad gets sick and he can't afford prescription drugs when my kid gets sick? How am I going to put away a few bucks so maybe I can retire with dignity? Half of older workers in America have nothing in savings right now as they face retirement. So every day, workers get up, they worry about their kids, they're worried about their parents, they're worried how they're going to pay their rent, their mortgages, and it eats away at you.
I mean, Ted, I have to say, I can understand why it is resonating with especially some young people who feel left out of the American dream.
Yeah, and he capitalizes on that. But what he's telling, I mean, he's selling garbage. He's telling you you didn't succeed because they held you back or they wouldn't let you succeed. They raised your rent. Instead of talking to people about, hey, you're in America, work, you'll achieve that. And on the Bolshevik Revolution, last thing they said here in this article I sent you, they made better use of speeches and media than their rivals, ensuring they presented a clear and understandable message. It's a populist message. Yeah, people want that. They want a fairer society. They want to go after the big guy. And so that's a very popular stance right now, especially with Trump and the current situation we have in this country. And it's just, people have to wake up that nothing is for free. You have to work for what you get, and that you have to have a system and a government in place that gives you opportunity. There is no other country on the planet that gives you the opportunity and freedoms and liberties we have, but we're losing them and we're boxing ourselves in. And our form of government, it's been around for 250 years, is becoming more of a centralized government that the founders fought against. And it becomes bogged down. And so it is a messy system and it needs to be cleaned up, but you don't want to throw it out because you're going to have what happened in the Bolshevik Revolution that started in 1917 and it lasted until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1996, I think, or 89, 96, somewhere in there. So it didn't last 100 years and it's a mess over there now. So get involved, get engaged, fight to preserve this country, not just to preserve it, but to make it better. And that's what our goal is here. And, we appreciate everybody.
Yeah, and people like Mandami and those other candidates, they need to be kind of watching what happened with the Bolshevik Revolution, because if it actually happens here, they're the first ones that get taken out.
Well, the useful idiots are the ones that get taken out and they get put on the collective farms and the collective factories.
Well, because Trotsky was the first one killed, really assassinated. But if switching to Russia real quick, because you mentioned Bolshevik, there's an interesting development. I don't know if you followed this or not, but apparently a Russian military commander had put out a video to Vladimir Putin addressing him. I don't know if he's still alive now, but he basically said that and it's gotten several million views now in Russia, that if Russia doesn't start, talking about Putin, doesn't start being honest with the Russian people about what's really happening in Ukraine and the devastation. He's not pro-Ukraine, he's just devastation to Russian soldiers and everything, that he's calling for an uprising. I would imagine this guy is either gone underground, literally or figuratively by now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that, Ted?
Well, I think that's what you're going to see all over Russia. I mean, again, from what I hear up there, he's losing support left and right. And of course, the way he deals with dissenters is he kills them, like he did Yuri Perneshkov, or what the plane blew up. And you're going to see more of this, but we don't want that to happen here. And we've got to get back to the basics. And with what's going on in Russia, it's just a telltale sign of what goes on in these despotic type of governments and lands. The place that's not happening, you don't hear about, is in China, and they're going through the same things there. Xi Jinping is eliminating his top generals because of the dissent. They've got economic problems, but they have a big vision, and that is to take over the world. And I think that's a wake-up call, and I commend that guy in Russia for doing that.
Well, his name is Alexander Lunin, Lunin, and my only advice to Mr. Lunin is run. You better run.
You know what? He needs to have political asylum in America.
Absolutely. Now, he's one we need to let in here. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. We hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide, make that call Freddie, help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. I hope everybody has a blessed and joyous weekend. Ted, take us out, sir.
We really do appreciate you tuning in. Send our message far and wide, and feel free to send donations or have people call in and become sponsors, like our good sponsors at Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair. Been in business for over 20 years, and call for an appointment, 352-495-2485, and tell them you heard about them on the PPP, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly and the Salty Dog, John Martin. God bless. Take care. See you Monday.